That is a huge advantage of writing over anything that's collaborative like that, or like we were in music. You got to go to the band practice. You got to get everybody together. Whereas writing, it's just you. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. The whole world's asleep. I feel like this is Dan's time to shine. I'm doing this.
Yeah. And that's how it works sometimes, it's like you pull all-nighters if you want. You can you're feeling that inspiration. There's a freedom to it, if you're lucky enough to have that, kind of freedom. Like I worked for 12 years for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in sort of like an administration, different administration roles and research and analyst roles. And I did most of my early writing career while working there at the same time. And so oftentimes, yeah, I'd start writing at 11 p.m. after coming home from working all day, and then maybe going to the gym, making myself dinner, and be like, all right, well, let's crack open the computer, see how many words we can get down. And that was like that. I spent years doing that, because I found a new passion instead of like the acting or the drawing and painting. I was like, I'm determined to get a draft of this manuscript done. And that was the difference between like why I felt I had to leave like the performance sort of arena, because I didn't have the passion for performing, for acting, for singing, and I didn't believe that I would actually ever be able to make it, or make a living, or have it be worth my while. Whereas I felt a passion to write, and like my first attempt at a book, it took me 4 years. It was 700 pages. It was a young adult novel, 700-page young adult novel that like was just contemporary kids in a high school. I mean, I feel like that was, if I were to, to think about it in terms of like a master's or something, that was like my education by doing it myself, learning how to finish something, despite the fact that it went on and on and on and on, and is probably just, I hope all copies have been destroyed.
Except for the one they're going to put in the damn
Oh,
Memorial
I
Library.
know. Like, I heard a story a couple years ago. I'm sure you know who John Bellairs is.
I'm not a podcast. Yes, I do.
For anybody who doesn't, and you should, because he does some good stuff. He is author of The House with the Clock in Its Walls, The Curse of the Blue Figurine, the just so many other sort of gothic 1950s set Americana, like witches and wizards and spooky ghosts and curses and stuff like that. I loved him when I was a kid, like beyond. And I heard that before he passed away, very young, in the early 90s, mid 90s, like he went through his office and like burned everything. He knew he was sick, and he was like, there was just stuff in there. He was like, I don't ever want this to be seen. And I understand that urge at this point. Sorry to be laughing while discussing one of my heroes, passings, but I do understand the urge to be like, well, when I'm gone, like, what kind of exploitation might be taking place, and I mean, the funny thing about that is that like his estate has gone on to work with an author named Brad Strickland and continue some of his unfinished manuscripts, and those sort of became a Brad Strickland, John Bellairs collaboration. And so, I mean, clearly there was stuff he didn't burn and that he was proud of and that he wanted to have live on after he was gone. But I just, yeah, I'm gonna have to look around here and see like what will be going into the bonfire if ever my time comes up and I'm aware.
Yeah, should you have the good fortune to know the day and be like, okay, well, I could be 100% prepared on that day. Whereas I have just, I understand that because there are things. I'm looking at a shelf right across from me that has some screenplays I wrote when I was in high school. That there are moments in there that I thought were very funny at age 18 that I do not find funny now.
Oh yeah, I bet.
I have just enough hubris that I think that if anybody were to go through it after I'm not around, one, I'm not here, so knock yourself out, whatever. There is an afterlife. I like to think that it's interesting enough. I'm not paying attention to what's still going on back here. Is my hope, or there is no me, in which case, whatever. But I have just enough hubris to think that, oh, well, if you read this, you'll know it's not good, but you'll see that there's just that spark of the excellence that was going to go on, light the bonfire of amazingness later.
Exactly. I mean, you have to wonder about the giants of these genres. It's like, did they ever just write something really, really bad that they never showed to anybody? And the answer must be yes. It has to be yes. Nobody's just pumping out something that is perfect and first go. Like, that's why we work with editors. That's why we work with agents, and these people like absolutely fundamentally help shape our work and try and get it to be the best version of what it is that we first imagined the work to be. I feel so lucky. I feel so lucky to be working with people that I work with and have worked with, because I don't think I could have managed to make the things that I've made on my own. You get your foot in the door with one person and you realize that they have some genius brilliance, and they're like, they suggest these little edits or things that happen, and like all of a sudden you think it's your idea. And you're like, gosh, of course I should have done that to this character. And no, this ending can't work. It's it's like that needs to be rewritten. But like these little author whisperers, these magical editor people, they're like, this needs to change, and I'm not gonna say anything negative about it, but it's your idea, like stuff like that. I think they're amazing.
It's this is I think episode 189.
Oh, wow.
And so now when I teach writing workshops, or I talk about writing, or even on the show, I just assume I'm regurgitating something somebody far more brilliant said on the show that I've heard, and has gotten mixed up a little bit in the back of my mind that, oh no, that's not an original thought. I assume it comes from a good place though. So
I'm sure I do the same thing, and I say, take it, embrace it. It's it's up for grabs, especially if you're teaching other people. Like, that kind of stuff it feels like it almost becomes universal, and you must share it.
And the people that said it to me learned it from someplace. I assume they're not born with the sacred knowledge that they've been getting for the first time.
Yes, the sacred knowledge of artists.
For that early work that I know I have, and I'm convinced Stephen King has it also. Obviously, far more talented fellow than myself. But when he released Blaze, for Richard Bachman. There's a
Oh
long
yeah.
forward on that says, hey, this was an early novel. Some may say this is just a Trump novel and it shouldn't have been published. And like, well, I'm thinking you're saying that because I'm reading it in your forward. And then I read the book, but you know what? You were right. There's some here, but there's some also really embarrassing moments along in that story. Like that probably shouldn't have been published. But I understand why you published it, because there were some really good moments to outweigh there's a heart attack scene that's just absurdly ridiculous, that like if you turned it in a fiction workshop, they'd say, sir, no.
Sir, no,
They
please,
it to the
please
editor. They say,
leave.
oh, Stephen, you've done it again. We're all going to buy boats.
I mean, you get to a point like that, and like, yeah, people are gonna say, yes, yes, you're brilliant. And I feel like for him, I don't want to speak for Stephen King, but like, I feel like it's got to be harder at this point for him to be edited. And I know he's asked. When Lisi's story came out, I remember he had asked to work with somebody who wasn't his regular editor. I think, his regular editor was a man, and he was like, this story is so female centered. He was like, I would really love to be working with a woman editor on this. And he said the manuscript came back covered in red ink, which he was very grateful for. But I imagine that he would probably, I don't know, like at his level and his age, it's like he's going to do what he wants, like he's going to take the book, and how do you edit Stephen King at that point? Like, like it's interesting to me, how do you trust your genius brain, or are you going to listen to somebody else who's probably also genius if you're editing Stephen King? No, slight to the wonderful publishing professionals who work with him. I can just imagine it would just be very difficult for both of them.
I don't think they'd serve up an intern. Like, go talk to
No. Yeah.
It seems like a particularly sadistic act of cruelty. I would hope.
Can you imagine? Like, amazing. Like, yeah, I started at Scribner, and I was pouring coffees the other day, and somebody asked me to take a look at Stephen King's new manuscript, and I just wrote some thoughts down. Yeah, they'd be out the door.
As we record this, I'm a couple of hours into the Fable audiobook. We'll see how it ends. I've heard it unravels, but man, that man can nail a beginning. Just breathtaking. So I'm hoping that it will continue to be excellent.
I've heard good things. I'm right now. I'm in the middle of reading different seasons, the novellas, with The Body and Apt Pupil and Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, Breathing Method. Reading it for the first time, ultimately because I'm trying to understand or see the voice, especially for the novella The Body, of this kind of like somebody looking back. When I think of the movie Stand By Me, it's from the perspective of a narrator who's looking back in his childhood, and that's, I feel like Stephen King does a really great job of capturing children on the page, child characters. It's like one of his biggest strengths. And as a middle grade author, like, I'm often writing from the perspective of the kids themselves, in present time, whether I don't think I've ever written anything other than maybe one of the short stories in the new collection that's not third person. But I've wanted to sort of see how the this master is able to from an adult perspective, looking back sort of with nostalgia, through that lens, see how he is able to tell that story. Because I want to work on a project where, you know, an adult person is looking back on a child's experience rather than like what I usually do, which is the child's experience told as a child. So that's what I'm doing. But like, so I've heard, you know, fairy tale kind of captures some of that as well.
You know, the new Stephen King.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that one too. But I do try to change it up and not only read Stephen King exclusively.
Oh yeah, no, that's a trap I fall into in the past, and then I start thinking, well, this is the way. This is the only way it can be. Read other writers. There's all sorts of brilliant folks out there.
Yeah.